This session is being recorded. I'm delighted to be able to welcome for our audience here today Tom McDowall, who's chairing our panel, and Emma and Tony, who work as judges within the space around the LT Awards. Delighted to welcome you guys. I'm now going to disappear. Everybody else, please make sure that you put your comments and please put your questions in the chat. Tom, delighted to see you, mate. Over to you.
Thanks ever so much, Andrew. Welcome, everyone. This is one of those really fun sessions for me because the awards are a real highlight of the year. If you've entered before, or perhaps if you judge alongside some of us, you know this already. But sometimes there can be a little bit of a mystery around what does make the difference between an application that gets a kind of, oh, well, that's really nice, but not this time, and those that are shortlisted, and those again that make it to winning an award and perhaps even carrying home a nice shiny trophy that, of course, means a lot, but most importantly, you can put behind you on a shelf for those Zoom calls and make yourself look very impressive. But what we want to do in this session is strip away as much of that mystery as possible. We want to give you the best chance possible of putting together a highly impactful entry that gets you one of those shiny trophies. So a good place to start is what that process actually looks like. And if I could, Tony, could you in kind of like a minute or less, probably more than a minute, let's be honest, run us through what the application and judging process looks like for the awards?
Yeah, sure. So the judging is basically, well, the awards really is a year-long activity, which sort of starts straight after the dinner in November when we start reviewing the previous year. We refine categories, we refine the judging criteria so that by May or so, when they're published on the Close Still website, we've got a set of categories that can be worked with, and they apply to the year. Applicants have got until the end of July to submit using the online portal that you get through the site, and the judges, who are organised into teams of 3, start work as soon as they get their entries around about 2nd, 3rd of August. And they're completely independent little teams with a chair and 2 other judges. They come up with their decisions, and the shortlists are created by the end of August, based on the judging criteria that are published on the website. The shortlists are then subject to second scrutiny, face-to-face or online face-to-face, in September, October. So we go through the whole process again, and then we make our decisions as to 1, 2, 3, which are announced at the dinner in November. So that's how it works.
Fantastic. So with that in mind then, and going over to you, Emma, in those early stages, when you're taking the first look at these entries and thinking about, you know, who's going to make the shortlist, what are the things that you're looking for in that first look to think, oh, that's going to make it through?
Thank you, and welcome everybody. And apologies, my fan is going on my computer, so maybe some background noise. So it's a great question, and you know, I want to sort of just caveat all of this by saying we look at each submission completely independently, so there's no comparison from one to the other. As Tony said, we've got our little teams, we have some scoring and judging criteria, and I actually make sure to because we have some time to do this, to look at just 1 or 2 a day, so that I'm definitely not doing that, right? So looking at each one very independently. And for me, the most successful submissions are the ones that do follow the criteria, answer the questions, but more than that, sort of take me on a journey and help me understand really what was driving the need. So, you know, if you look at the criteria, all of the prompts are there, and it's work that we know as learning professionals that you're all doing. So you're going to start with a business driver, you're going to have those meetings, you're going to figure out who your stakeholders are, you're going to talk to your learners, talk to your audience, you know, make decisions around the technologies that you're using and the strategies that you're applying. and the solutions that you're creating. But quite often, I would say, people tend to get lost in some of those details and focus on what they've created. So, you know, a lot of submissions, excuse me, talk, hey, we made this great thing, it's fantastic, everyone loved it. I really want to understand why you did it, how you made those decisions, you know, how that need kind of translated and transitioned into your solutions. And if you look at the criteria for each of the categories, all of that information's in there. You know, those are the prompts that I'm looking for. So yeah, tell me a story, take me on the journey, help me understand the why and the how behind the what that you've created. I think is my top tip.
Fantastic. And Tony, what about yourself?
I want the job to be as easy as possible so that I can be as fair as possible. And we've only got around about an hour per submission, simply because of the mechanics. You know, I mean, some people only get like 10 to judge. Sometimes you might get 30 or even 40. And if you think about that, 40 times 1 hour is nearly 2 working weeks, 1.5 working weeks, which, you know, none of the judges, all of the judges are volunteers. They're all doing it in their spare time in August. So you can see that having something that is easy to understand and easy to follow is going to be a big plus. So what I look for first is clarity. Is it really clear what it is you've done and why? I also like to look at the material, if there is material. Most of them involve some product or other. So I tend to take it from a quick look at the submission, scan it, and then look at what it is we're talking about, get a feel for that, and then go back to the submission, see, right, what's the case for this? And then begin to apply the criteria to that. So that's a quick overview. There's lots more detail, but that's a quick overview of what I look for.
Brilliant. And I guess there's a counterpoint to this, of course, which is, what are the things that you see that are the blockers to people being shortlisted? The things that when you read or when you see in a submission, you know are going to make this a more challenging entry to make it to that shortlist. Emma, do you want to kick us off with that one?
Converse, right? So not having a clearly written submission that doesn't answer all the questions. But then also, I mean, I know that we'll probably touch on this a little bit later on, but, you know, understanding the impact of the work and making sure that it did, you know, there's, what was it, Ron Seal does what it says it was going to do on the tin. You know, so it's one thing understanding what the business need for, you know, this brilliant shiny thing that you've created, but has it had the desired impact, not only on your learners, but also on the business itself? And that's something that tends to, again, sort of get glossed over, or, hey, we've had some great results, everyone loves it. So really diving into more of that quantitative, qualitative impact data is so important. And then sort of piggybacking on that, if I may, sorry, Tony, is that quite often people will enter the awards too soon. So this is sort of part and parcel of that, I think. So it's really tempting, I think, especially if you've been working on a really big, exciting initiative with your team for a long time, and there's buzz around it, right? And you've just put it out and everyone's excited, and you know, you want to submit for the awards. My sort of ask is just hold on, just wait, because having this great solution is only part of it. So you really need to understand the impact it's had. So yeah, just hold off, let it bake a little bit, let it get out there, let it percolate, let the results come in, get that feedback, make that, you know, those fine tunings to it, and then enter.
Brilliant. And Tony, what about yourself? What are those red flags for you when you're reading an entry?
I think the best way to put this is, quite a few of you attending may once have been in education in one way or another. I certainly was. I used to be a comprehensive school teacher. And when you come to mark exams, the ones that are really good are really easy. And the ones that are really bad are really easy. And in the middle, there's a whole pile of them, and you can't see the wood for the trees. You spend a long time trying to work out what it is they're saying, and that's a problem. So that's why it comes back to that clarity thing. How clear is it that there was an issue, there was a problem, a performance need, a challenge, a business challenge, what was done to meet that challenge, how that was done, and what the outcomes were. Unfortunately, you've got the judging criteria to work from, and because that is what, in the end, we score on. So if you want the biggest hint and tip I can give for anyone putting a submission together is use the judging criteria, the bit that says what the judges will be looking for. Use that as your guide. That each of those should really be a heading, and then you say how your submission satisfies each of those criteria, almost like answering an exam question. Put your evidence in that structure. You're making the job easier for the judges, and therefore they can see what you've said and what you've done so much more easily. You give yourself a far better chance.
Yeah, but please do it, yeah.
Middling area. I judged another program recently, and had sort of 10 programs, and it wasn't even a leadership development category, but sort of by coincidence, most of the programs that were entered were leadership development programs, right? And they were all good on their own. They all kind of, met a need, but what was really missing was what made this a very special leadership development program. In the sea of leadership development programs, why should this one stand out? And I think that's, what we're looking for here, right? This is a learning technologies awards program where, innovation, whatever that looks like to you, is important, right? So just think also, hey, if I was up against another program like this one, what makes ours stand out? What makes it different? Whilst still answering the criteria and making sure that you're not missing that key information. But yeah, what is it that makes this one special? It could be, you had a really low budget. It could be you had a quick turnaround. It could be you had a, very unique or specific audience that you had to, provide a solution for. I mean, we've all been through it, right, with COVID not that long ago, getting creative. So what is it that makes yours stand out if you're up against somebody else who is entering something similar, I think is where that sort of middle stuff starts to shake out.
Fantastic. We've got some really great questions coming in the chat. I just want to hop over them because some of them are quite relevant to what we're discussing kind of right now. So the first one, is it possible to see an actual winning entry from a previous year? So there are some opportunities to do that. Just to jump into this one. At Learning Technologies in April, there was actually a stage dedicated to this. So I appreciate that doesn't help you today, but obviously next year, do come along and look at those. But there's also an event each year, a showcase event run by the Learning Network, where some winners come along and share their winning entries and talk about them. And those are recorded and they're available on YouTube. And I'm not sure if we can try and get a link to those on the Learning Network YouTube channel. They're freely available. They're not locked down to members at all. We'll try and get a link into the chat for you. They are, you're exactly right, a real gold mine because they're the gold and silver winners from the previous year. You can hear basically what they said to us. The next one, just on the point about time spent reviewing each submission, and I guess this is to both yourself, Tony, and Emma, we are planning on including a link to a video interview we did with our client about the journey of our project. Just a little add-on to the submission. The interview is about 20 minutes. However, would this still be worth including? Thoughts on that? I guess there's two elements there. There's a 20-minute video and there's the idea of it being an add-on to the submission.
Yeah. Can I take this one? I would look at what is in the interview that is adding value and which judging criteria is it adding value to. Look really carefully at that and see if you want between nearly half to a third of the judge's effort to be spent on that particular interview. If you could condense the key points down to a couple of minutes, it will be watched. 20 minutes is probably pushing it, because there will be lots and lots of other evidence to look at. Depends on the category, clearly, but yeah, just evaluate and put yourself in as a judge. Imagine you were judging it. What would you get from that interview that you couldn't get from other means? So I would look at that. But certainly, it's probably pushing the limits a little bit of usefulness, I'd say.
Emma, any other thoughts on that, or that about? Cool. Well, another kind of somewhat similar one, on a practical level, I see the word count is 2,000 words, and there is a limit to the number of slides that can be included. Are there any limits on screenshots and links within the content?
I think Joe, can you type something in for that one? Because I think we've introduced a limit now to the number of links. Again, consider how long the judges are going to take, and what's the smallest amount you can put in there to support your case, and do that. If you need to do a demo reel, produce a demo reel. If you can condense it all down to a 2 or 3 minute piece, do that. But be reasonable to the judges. Okay, if something is going to take a couple of hours to look at, people will cut off. They'll say, "Well, I've got as much evidence as I need now. I need to move on." So yeah.
Just going to dive in there, guys.
I think we
Sorry, Tony, just cut across. You're just going to dive in there, guys, very quickly. Natalie has said the submissions do say that the submission guidelines maximum cumulative length of videos is 5 minutes. So we have it in there. It's quite clear. We can't go more than 5 minutes in total. Thank you, Natalie, for picking that out.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Emma, anything you want to add on? I guess because there's a lot of questions about very specifics there, and I think that's probably the best thing to do is to say, do read the guidelines. They are there to help with some of these. I think there's probably the last one. We've got like file size limits. I'm not sure any of us are going to have the megabyte based answer that you're looking for there, but I'm sure the guidelines do say, and if not, if someone I'm sure someone from Closer Still would be able to give you the idea of the technical requirements for your submission in that sense. So moving on ever so slightly, most of the categories, Emma and Tony, ask for some form of impact evidence. What are you looking for when it comes to impact? Are you looking for hard quantitative data? Do you want qualitative interviews? Do you want a blend? And how does that change across the categories that are out there? Emma, do you want to kick us off on this one?
To improve, I don't know, employee engagement or retention, or that, you know, you had some business impetus, some driver that surfaced a need, and this is what you were developing your solution to solve, or at least partially solve, then I want data that shows me, first of all, what that picture looked like in the beginning and how you captured that data and identified this as a need, and then how that influenced all of your decisions, which I talked about earlier. And then at the end of it, okay, you know, how did you pinpoint the people that were going to help support this, right? So your target audience, what were their performance gaps, right? And how are you sort of observing that in the beginning to sort of back up this being a problem? And then at the very end, all right, what's different, what's changed, and how are you measuring that? So from a sort of individual performance standpoint, I want to see things like, you know, observable data. So whether it's, you know, actually observing somebody on the job, 360 sort of peer reviews, anything but, you know, self-reported data is really crucial at this point. The self-reported stuff is fine, I think, to, you know, paint that overall picture, but in terms of true impact, I want to understand how has the behaviour shifted, and then, if you can, which is not always easy, but how has that then impacted the business, and what data can you share with us to prove that? And then the qualitative stuff kind of just helps fill in those gaps, right? So then if you've got, ideally, your learners providing some feedback, but more importantly, I'd say when it comes to things like performance and business impact, let's, bring in those stakeholders. So I forget your name, I'm sorry, but whoever's doing that interview with a stakeholder, that kind of data is also as important, I would say, or almost as important as the hard data, anything that kind of helps us understand that overall shift that's happened. And then when it comes to sort of what I call, thinking about Patrick with the lower levels, knowledge, shifts. Obviously, we've got pre and post tests that you could use to track the shift in knowledge. And then from a sort of reaction, learner experience piece, if attendance has been an issue in the past and now your attendance rates have gone up, fantastic. If learner engagement was poor in the past and you've got metrics that can prove that learner engagement has shifted, maybe you're using things like XAPI in your e-learning programs, and you can show, hey, people are clicking here now and they didn't used to click here. Anything that shows, again, impact on that thing that you were trying to shift, whether it's business performance, learner experience. Make sure you're answering what you set out to do.
Absolutely. And Tony, what about from your perspective?
I absolutely agree with everything Emma said. I can, and I've just posted in the chat what all of the criteria, nearly all of the criteria, have as part of the guidance. So it's in there. I suppose I could take the liberty of summing up what Emma's said in a few words, which is, what problem did you have? How did you solve it? Prove it. How good is your proof? And if your proof is 1,000 people finish the course, that's not as good as 1,000 people finish the course and we sold 15 million more widgets that we weren't selling before. That's good evidence. If the chief stakeholder says we really love this piece of work and we're glad we funded it, that isn't as good as 15 clients saying this is the best learning intervention we've ever had. Stuff like that. Look at it. How strong is your evidence? How much would it convince anyone that you've actually solved the problem you set out to solve? But you said all that, Emma, just in better words than me.
Fantastic. And I think the only thing I'd add on that question is be brutally honest about the proof that you do and don't have. There is always an urge maybe to stretch what we think we can prove, perhaps cross that line between correlation and causation in some of our claims. Be really clear about what you're claiming and articulate it really honestly. If for no other reason than if you make like a really strong causal link claim, you will 100% be asked to prove it in person on the call, and it's super awkward if you then come. But also it kind of torpedoes your own credibility in the judging process if you make a claim that you can't back up. So really be careful about how you word your claims and that you can back up, as both these judges have said, everything that you claim you can. We have had a couple of people in the questions ask where they can find the criteria, where they can see these criteria that we're talking about. So what we're going to do is just throw up on the screen the website where you can see exactly that, because they are there waiting to help you. So if you just go to the website, you can then navigate to the categories, and under each category you will see what it's all about, basically, what that category is, what the judges will be looking for, and everything you need to know to apply for the award. So the questions given here, the points given here about what the judges are going to be looking for, this is the criteria that you are going to be considered against. This is true of every single category, whether you're entering one category or all the categories. That would be quite a move, but hey, who knows? One thing I think that highlights straight away is that you might think, oh, we can enter multiple categories, and that's great, and please do. But don't just enter the same thing in all of them with the same entry, because these categories do all ask for different things. So just to quickly me, if anyone's struggling to find them, that's super easy to get to. They're all there, every single category laid out for you. Attached to kind of this information here, Tony, Emma, are there any kind of top tips about how people can use this web page, these outlines, when writing their submissions?
Yeah, I've got a couple of. Can you leave just that one? Not that one. That's a slightly different one. Can you go back up to one of the others? Blah, blah, blah. Not platform. Keep going up a bit more. Yeah,
Tell me
just
which one you
game.
want, Tony.
Game will
Which
do.
one?
Game.
Best technology-based learning game. There we go.
Go on,
Okay.
game. Right, and just that's it. Right. Yeah. So they're all structured the same way. There's an intro. That's the big picture about the category. So read that really carefully. All of the judges will have a score sheet, and that opening paragraph is on every single score sheet as a reminder that this is what it's about. Then the score sheets are divided up into different columns for those bullet points, and each bullet point is scored out of 10. We need a process that's comparable across judges and across categories. So that's essentially what happens. And then what you need to know is really important guidance about what you need to be entering. The stuff about evidence is in there as well. You need to back up claims. That's what we talked about in the last point. Notice where it says it may be strongly beneficial if the judging panel can see your submission in action. That's really, really important. So many judges see 2,000 words and precious little evidence of what it is that's being talked about. So we all really want to see the thing that you're submitting, the thing that was created. It doesn't apply to all of them, like Team of the Year, but it applies to most of them. Now, notice it says it may be strongly beneficial. That's simply because if your pride and joy is not brilliant, we can't say it is beneficial. Obviously, you can shoot yourself in the foot. But on the whole, show us what it is you're talking about to support your entry. Then we know what it is you're saying. So that's really important. But the criteria really are the centerpiece of each one. That's really Emma. Sorry, I've talked a lot.
Emma, would you like to add anything on that? Oh, we can't hear you, Emma. Oh, there we go.
Difficult to sum up this amazing thing that you've done in 2,000 words. Really, really difficult. So I would start big, right? Just document it all, get it all out, get it all on the page, use the criteria as your sort of guideline to structure it all. And, to Tony's point, each one of those will be scored. So try to then figure out, okay, how much time do I need to spend on each of these, but, without sort of missing out too many detail, and then sort of edit down, I think is my sort of top piece of advice around using the criteria, because we will score each one of them. So if you sort of gloss over one really quickly, we can only give you a score based on how much information there is on the page. Equally, right? It's difficult. I just really want to acknowledge that. And then for the supporting material, there was a question about screenshots. I would say if you can do a little video walkthrough for us, that's going to be much more beneficial, I think, to us than perhaps screenshots are. It doesn't have to be like beautifully produced. It can be a bit scrappy. Just turn on your screen, start recording. Walk us through your solution. That will paint 1,000 words for us, right? I'd much rather have that than sort of try to make sense of screenshots without any context behind them. So a couple of entries did that last year, and they were beautiful, right? And again, it doesn't have to be edited or massively overproduced. just help us understand. And the same goes then if you've got material where you can't share a link with us, you know, to your platform or to your program. There's lots of ways around that. But yeah, help us see what it is that you're talking about. This is your first chance to impress us, and then you'll have that opportunity again if you're shortlisted to come back. But yeah, just acknowledging it's not easy. But yeah.
Tony,
I
do you want to
would,
jump back in?
yeah, I would add a bit there. I mean, I think we do get a lot of video walkthroughs of materials. All of the judges I've worked with spend their entire time hitting the pause button to see what it is they're looking at. But I tend to judge the excellence in content categories. So we're looking at the content and we want to see what you've designed, how you've designed it. Does your design embody best learning principles, best principles of cognitive science? So we actually want to see, you know, do you know what you're talking about? And is that clear from what you've submitted? And an actual sample is more powerful than something you've put together. But then I think we're also showing that judges vary in what they want, which is why we have panels of 3. So it's always a very active discussion. I don't know if Tom, if we're going to go on to have the judging works at any point, but they're very, very active discussions where we throw things backwards and forwards, and the borderline ones, or you know, if we're not sure about who's going to win and who's not going to, and who's going to get silver and bronze, or bronze and silver and gold, those discussions can be very heated. It's taken very, very seriously, and we go down to those basic elements of design and you know, of e-learning. So anything you can do to help us, to convince us that you have done, that you know what you're doing and that it's quality, is going to help.
Fantastic. I want to do a quick question that's come in the chat regarding the specifics around data and impact, and then we will move on to the second part of the process, i.e., you've been shortlisted. What next? So let's talk data. What specific types of quantitative data carry the most weight? Learner satisfaction scores, business KPIs, ROI calculations, or behavioral change metrics?
That they were telling us that we solved that problem with this training solution. Hey, we did a control group, that's the gold standard, I would say, and now we've got this change in scores. You know, the metrics we would be looking for are, okay, what was that customer service level data before, and if possible, can you know, help us understand what the performance of the customer service agent was before? Was it, you know, hey, you know, they sort of didn't go from a call sheet and now they do? And then afterwards, all right, what was the solution you put in place? How are you measuring that customer data now? Did you do a control group so that we can at least get some of that correlation that you were talking about earlier, Tom? And then, you know, from a performance standpoint for the actual individuals, so you've got this sort of external business with this data, you know, have you got supervisors watching and observing these calls to make sure that they're now following this new process or procedure? You know, it should all, I would say, it should all be baked into your actual solution in the first place, right? So understanding, you know, at the very beginning when you're doing that needs analysis and doing that stakeholder analysis, business learner, all of that, you know, as you're designing your solution, these are things that you should be putting in place from the very beginning so that you can make sure that you're hitting those goals, and they will vary. So if it's, you know, it's employee engagement, you can be looking at employee engagement metrics. If it's leadership engagement, you know, all of these things are kind of an it depends. But yeah, that's helpful.
Super. Tony, can I give you the second half of this question? I'm just aware of time because I know we want to make sure we spend enough time on the second part of the judging process. So the second part is, how granular should impact evidence be? Do you prefer longitudinal studies over 6 to 12 months, or short-term metric, or can short-term metrics be compelling?
I'm going to answer it as if you haven't asked the question, because I think it's the same anyway. Uh, you sometimes, quite often you hear people saying your work should be with an award mindset. You know, any work you do should be as good as it can be, regardless of whether you enter for an award or not. And for this, to answer this question, I think imagine that you're not presenting to a bunch of judges who are here today and gone tomorrow, but you're presenting to your board or your stakeholders or your budget holders, and you want to go back for more money, or you want to justify the expense, the money they gave you for the piece of work. How would you say to them, this is what we've done, can we have some more money, please? Or this is what we've done, give me a promotion. Yeah, what evidence would you present to them? They're not going to be stupid. They're going to really know what you're talking about. So the metrics you present should be meaningful for the problem you've solved. So all of the category, I'm looking at one that says the project has been aligned to a clearly identified performance need, right? That's common across most of the categories. So you've got an identified performance need. How will you know you've met that need and improved the performance? So I'm not going to say this study is better than that study. It always depends on what evidence you need to provide to make the case. So, use your, be creative about it, but be business-like about it, because we will pick that up. All of the judges are highly experienced, have been doing it for years, and are all in business in one form or another, so they will know what you're talking about. But yeah, select your evaluation measurements according to what you need to do to prove the case, is what I'd say.
Fantastic. So as mentioned, I know there's loads of questions we could dive into, but I want to make sure we give the whole judging process an overview, and then we can dive back in if we've got time for more questions. So you've been shortlisted. Congratulations. Hypothetically, in our minds, we'd all like to be shortlisted. Now you've got an interview stage ahead. So just to kick us off, Tony, from your perspective, what is the purpose of that interview versus the submission that's already been given?
Yeah, it's to validate the first stage, really, to validate the shortlisting. And because of the nature of this exercise, there are strong ones and there are weaker ones, and there are the ones that don't get shortlisted. But clearly, it's all graded. So some people only just get into shortlisting, and some don't. Some are excellent, What we want in the second phase is give us more. Give us the big. I mean, Emma, you talked about the story before. Give us the story. I think that's the time to give the story more than early. It's what went on here. How impactful has it been? Show us the best parts of this thing. It's really an embellishment and an enrichment of the first stage, and that's when, if you haven't been clear in the first stage, judges will come at you for clarity, and if you can't be clear, you might be in trouble. If you can add, it's going to be an asset. And we do find that fairly often the strongest ones at shortlisting turn out to be the ones that get the prizes. But very often we find that the ones that only just get into shortlisting can go right up the scale in their presentation if they've told a good story and if their evidence is really strong. So there's all to play for in the second stage, really. But be concise and be clear and be enthusiastic. I think that helps a lot.
And Emma, what about yourself?
also say, create some slides and visuals for us, right? We can have a conversation, but it's always great to be able to see things, your process, your mechanism for doing things, and also any additional information that will be useful. Something that I particularly enjoy from panel judging is if you can bring your learners along, or somebody else that can kind of demonstrate that impact, on a personal level. So quite often we'll see, the learning team and then maybe a sort of a stakeholder. But the best ones for me are when the learners are sitting there saying, I did this, and not just it's amazing, here's how it's changed or transformed me and my, performance in the workplace. And along the same lines, just a word to vendors, and I sit on the vendor side in my other life. If there's a vendor there, make sure that your client is present with you, make sure your client is talking, make sure your client is engaged in this process, helping you put together your presentation and really leading the charge in terms of telling the story and explaining how everything came to be. I mean, I know the vendors do all the work mostly, right? But it's really the time to let the client shine, let the solution shine, let the outcome shine. And then, just be prepared to answer any and all questions. The best presentations are the ones where we as judges don't have any questions at the end, right? Where you've answered all of them for us. You've taken us through the business need. We have a clear understanding of how and why you've developed the thing. I'd say this is a really great opportunity also to touch on any change management that you may have, had to deal with, your implementation strategy, marketing, communications, any constraints or challenges that you faced during the implementation, and then of course, all of that lovely what happened next bit that you might not have as much time to talk about. So really just, colour in the detail for us and leave us with no questions. That's the best position for us to be in.
With all the best intentions of not leaving any gaps, though, there are inevitably questions. If for no other reason than we're judges and we like to ask questions. That's what we do. That is probably broader L&D point there, isn't there? But we do have a question in the chat about exactly that from Jessica Ward. Curious about the interview and how interview questions are chosen. We were shortlisted for a project last year, and in the interview, we were asked questions I wasn't expecting. Wish I could remember, but I don't recall in the moment. Would love to get some insight into interview questions in general. Now, this is quite an interesting one. Tony, do you want to kick us off, and then Emma will come to you?
Well, there's no specific guidance on that. I mean, judges will ask questions where they need clarification, really. So you don't know what's going to come. It might be to do with, very often, it's to do with impact. That tends to be the greatest focus. For me, because of what I do for a living, it's about design decisions. So, you don't know where it's going to come from, so I can't really prepare you for that. It's like with any interview, the ones that come from left field can be the ones that throw you, but we can ask whatever we like if it's to get more insight into the submission, really.
Brilliant. And Emma?
And another judge was, sort of, to your point, Tony, talk about design and implementation. So we kind of had an agreement ahead of time, but it always comes back to the criteria. You shouldn't really be asked a question that you're not expecting to be asked, I would say. So curious to hear about that, and do get in touch. But it's you get you get the floor first, and then we just get to clarify at the end, ask clarifying questions.
Briefly, at the shortlisting stage, there is a big discussion about what's going to get shortlisted and why, and every single entry is reviewed and a review is written. So often that's where we begin to get the seeds, as it were, of what's going to come up in the presentations. You know, if the panel says, actually, that particular one, I wasn't sure about that, you're likely to get that coming up in the presentation. Or the evidence for this wasn't very strong, you're likely to get that in the presentation. So, you know, they don't come out of the blue. I don't think so anyway. There will be something behind it. Yeah, that's all really.
Brilliant. I can see a couple of people are typing questions actively, and we are in the last sort of 13, 14 minutes. So please do get your questions in now. We want to leave you well armed for entering. Just on that point, one thing that I was chatting to people earlier this week about doing exactly this, preparing for if you're shortlisted, is do something internally. Role play this out. Get some peers in your business or outside your business, if at all possible, so they're not thinking the same as you, and say, what's wrong with this? What have I not included? What am I missing? What have I not explained well? You know, there's nothing to say you can't practice for this like you might practice for a job interview, let's say, and get some other eyes on it. Oh, got some interesting questions coming through, actually. Any specific advice for the categories that are people-based rather than project-based, like designer or developer of the year? I think these are always quite interesting categories whenever we see them. So, Emma, do you want to start us off on that? Oh, don't listen to me. It's nothing important. That's that's absolutely fine. No. So, Kate asked, do you have any specific advice for categories that are people-based rather than project-based, like designer or developer of the year? That's okay. Tony, over to you.
I take responsibility for these. Yeah, look at the criteria. I mean, essentially, look at the criteria. They're different. They're portfolio based. You need to show that the designer stroke developer does everything it says in the list, and you need to have evidence for that. So testimonials are really important. It's a lot harder to produce performance-based stuff for those categories, but you can do a lot with the criteria that are there. Show the quality of output and show it over a range of projects. But look at the criteria and satisfy them. That's definitely where to go. Definitely.
Fantastic. We've had a couple more technical ones come in that I can see have been answered in the chat. Change again. I think all the ones in the chat have now been answered because there were quite a few technical ones. So we're in our last couple of minutes. To both of you, if someone were to go away with only one thing, they ignore everything you've said so far, and they were just going to leave this with one piece of advice for writing their entry. Emma, what would you tell that one person?
Project straight away. Start writing that submission right away. You can always come back and refine and edit it. And then worst case scenario, if you decide not to apply, you've got a fantastic case study that you can share with your team. So I think that's certainly the direction I'm shifting into with awards outside of you.
Fantastic. Great stuff. And Tony, what about you?
I've got one which may morph into two. Use the criteria as exam questions. Answer them as well as you can with as much evidence as you can. Your submission has to be good. You know, it's got to be good in the first place. But tell us how it's good. That's really important. And if you've got no impact data or little impact data, it's too early. Unless the category doesn't require impact data as much, because they don't all. So yeah, a lot of stuff comes in before it's over. I mean, Emma said that you can delay by a year to collect good evidence. A lot of people benefit from that. They actually come back and win gold if they do that sometimes. So there was a question in the chat, by the way, about how many get shortlisted, which hasn't been answered. It depends on the category and the strength of the field. It's around about 50% plus a bit, but that can vary. That can be a lot more in a very strong field. It can be quite a bit less in a field that isn't quite so strong.
Yeah, I know that's always a discussion every year. Is where do we draw that line? It's one of those heated debates each year within each judging group. That question usually takes a little bit longer for us to answer when we answer that. So I'm gonna throw in one more. Maybe just touching on some of the comments we had earlier in the conversation around the judging itself. So in terms of how judging panels work, can we just quickly talk about your experience of being a judge, and what that looks like in kind of maybe 2 minutes each? Emma, could you kick us off on that?
And then I don't get involved, I don't know if the lead judge does in the shortlist, but then the shortlisters are presented to us. I'll take one more pass through those submissions just to re-familiarise myself with the applicant, and then again, fresh set of eyes when it comes to the actual face-to-face judging, sort of, park everything that I've heard before and start fresh on that day.
Perfect. And Tony, anything you'd like to share about your judging experience?
Yeah, I'm always impressed by how passionate people get. I don't like using that word normally, but people get really heated up. The judges get really heated up about decisions, and the discussions are really strong. We score as the beginning. We score as the starting point, so that we've got something to compare each other with. But then we have very, very strong and very robust and positive discussions about comparing, because it's a competition, so you've got to have a scale. And I'm always reassured by how the best always comes out on top. And the quality of the debates is fantastic. That's really good.
Absolutely. I think if we could televise them, we'd all be enjoying those, but I feel like there might be issues with that. Fantastic. Well, I want to say a massive thank you, Tony and Emma, for your time today. Everyone who's got involved, thank you in the chat as well. It's been wonderful to be able to answer your questions as we go along. And before we run over time, what I want to do is hand back over to Andrew. Andrew, thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Didn't the guys do well? Thank them. Stick it in the chat. Tell them how well they did. That was fascinating. This is behind the judges' table and what makes a good entry. I love this. This is awesome. Brilliant job, guys. There's a couple of questions which people might have specific things about. Don't worry. We're here to get you. So, on the left-hand side of the screen you've got the website. So take you straight through to the Tech Awards. Underneath that, you've got connection with the speakers. You've got Emma's details, Tom's details, and Tony's for them on LinkedIn. And Jo, who is the absolute queen of the awards. She is the boss around this stuff and is awesome. But if you have any questions that are outstanding, ping them to Jo. And if Jo can't answer them, Chris, who's been in the chat, and the other people from Learning Technologies who have been in here, they will be able to sort you out. So if you do have any more questions, ping them through to Joe, and you can then go back. There's also some other links on there. So the link to the Learning Ward videos. You asked about the videos and you mentioned the Learning Network. I've got videos, Tom. There's the link to the YouTube channel. So if you would like to have a look at the most recent ones, I think are 2023, I think the ones that are on there, but please go back and have a look. And then there's also the links there to the submission guidelines and to the categories, which is the page that I was showing on the screen, and also to the terms and conditions, which are definitely worthwhile having a look at as well. We are 3 minutes to go, so there we go. We are just coming up to time. Massive thank you to everybody. Really good work. Like I said, Tom, Tony, and Emma, and you can see it in the chat. Look at all the comments. Everybody's really helpful. Really thankful for that. And please enter the awards. I've entered awards previously. Love the experience because if nothing else, just actually having to stop, pause, and think about, is this any good? Do you know what? It is. And just getting that sense of satisfaction that you're doing good work is really, really important. And it's something we should do more of. And if you're doing good work, tell the world about it. Because you know what? We need people to understand what good learning and learning technology and good learning design is all about. So please do make sure that you do enter the awards. Looking forward to sorting the rooms out. I help out with the rooms around the judging and so on. So hopefully I'll see some of your names coming up when you get shortlisted, if you get shortlisted. Thank you, everybody, for your time. I'm now going to stick you all back into the lobby and stop the recording. Thank you, everybody. Good luck, and hopefully see you soon. Okay.